From Rotary Magazine, this is the Rotary Voices podcast. I'm Jerome McDonnell. If you follow the Gregorian calendar, like most of the world, you ring in the new year on January 1st. But for Rotary, July marks the beginning of a new year. Clubs and districts around the world host installation ceremonies. They put in place new local leadership, district governors, and a new Rotary International president. It's a moment for members and incoming leadership to reflect and find opportunities to grow their Rotary clubs and build club culture, a key factor in attracting new members and preserving existing Rotarians. What are things we can do to keep members engaged so they can stay in Rotary? To answer this question, I'm here with Rotary International staff members Nick Taylor and Brianne Haxton. Nick and Brianne, thank you both for joining me on the Rotary Voices podcast. Good to meet you both.
It's good to be here. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Happy New Year.
One of the statistics about membership that jumps out is that Rotary loses half of all new members within 3 years of joining. What are the membership trends there at Rotary?
You know, it's really interesting. If you look at our membership as a whole, we have not had that much change in decades, right? You know, we've hovered around the same membership number, but if you take a deeper dive, it is constantly churning, right? And what is really interesting is where membership changes. So globally, you know, Rotary started in the United States. It started actually here in Chicago, Illinois. And for a long time, the majority of members were really based in the United States and then in Western countries. And you see, as, you know, we're living in a global world with economies that are changing, and our membership, you know, follows those trends. So we have changed quite a bit, and there are areas of decline, like the United States and North America in general, Europe, Australia, which have, you know, traditionally been places where Rotary has had the strongest membership, and that has really declined. Where there are markets where we're really seeing tremendous growth, you know, parts of Africa, India, Brazil. So even though on the surface we bring in 150,000 new members every year, but we're losing folks, and where we're losing folks, we try to keep track of that as we're doing those membership trends, to think about, like, what can we do to address that loss in those places.
Well, it sounds like all the places that you're losing members are the developed world. It's places where maybe joining a club is not the thing it used to be 50 years ago. It's almost like a Robert Putnam bowling alone scenario, where people just don't join clubs anymore. There's too many things to do. Their schedules are too packed. Is that the thing you're fighting in those regions?
I think that's certainly one thing we're fighting. I mean, we're fighting a lot of things. We're fighting, online connection, which that wasn't a thing, 20 years ago. Certainly not when Rotary was initially thought up. That wasn't they needed that personal connection, and so for many years we relied on people connecting locally with their neighbors and having that opportunity for friendship within a club, and also the professional development that club could bring them. But online really changed a lot of that. And so in addition to the way economies work, there is, this other whole presence of online membership, or, online connection that we're now fighting, which now we've been fighting that long enough that it's almost kind of the pendulum is swinging back, because people are tired of connecting online. People are tired of kind of that shallow connection, and they see Rotary as a way, and we want them to see Rotary as a way to make these really genuine connections with people, and to sit across the table from someone that you realize, hey, I really like this person, and this is a really valuable way to spend my time. So that's one thing that is pretty special about Rotary, but that's a message that we need to get out, to people.
And it seems like the people you've surveyed about the club experience, seem to indicate that that is why new members leave. They're not satisfied with the club experience. And that gets over to Nick Taylor. He supervises club and district support at Rotary in the Americas. Great to meet you, Nick.
Hey, it's good to be here. Good to meet you.
Now, it's what happens in a club experience that can kind of be rethought? It seems like Rotary's been working pretty hard to rethink what a satisfying club experience should be.
Yeah, and I think before we get into the details of what could be rethought, one has to really understand what the club experience is, right? Rotary International is this massive organization with so many different programs, projects, and different things that you can do. So there's a lot of ways to participate with Rotary and not actually be a member of a club. We have Rotary Community Corps, we have global grants happening all around the world, we have these events that one can attend. But our bread and butter, really what happened in 1905 and what has really led us throughout the last 120 years is the club. And so oftentimes clubs meet week to week, and they have a meeting structure, they have people come in and talk, and they have this opportunity, like Brianna has mentioned, where you can really have that personal touch. And so as important and as great as the other aspects of Rotary International are, in 2022, we did this survey, like you mentioned, and we said, why are members leaving? Why aren't members sticking around? What's the most important thing to them? And it wasn't the extra things. It wasn't these district conferences with multi-clubs. It wasn't the things that Rotary International was doing per se. The biggest and number one reason was what was happening on that week-to-week basis with the clubs. And that's where this idea of club culture comes into play, because we want to create inclusive and welcome environments for these members so that they do want to come back. They do want to sit across the table from people and have those conversations and have that in-person touch that maybe doesn't always exist.
And what do you think is going on out there right now that needs to change? How do you change something that's been going on since 1905 and is your bread and butter?
Yeah. Such a good question. So the example that I like to give is, we have over 35,000 different Rotary clubs in the world. And unlike Starbucks or, other known brands, you're going to have a unique experience in every single club. I just recently had the opportunity to go to Taiwan last year, and I went to a Starbucks in Taiwan. And turns out my experience in the Taiwanese Starbucks was pretty similar to the Starbucks down the street, right? I can expect things. I know what I'm going to get. I know the environment. I know the people. I know the type of product I'm going to get. But what we've noticed is, as you mentioned, 50 years ago, maybe if I would have gone to a Rotary Club in Taiwan or Australia or Nairobi, Kenya, or anything like that, I might have had a very similar experience. It might have been a very similar structure. But we live in a day and age where everything is changing. We have technology, we have different cultural movements, we have different generations working together. And so each club has this unique culture. So to answer your question, I think the number one most important thing we can do is be aware that we have a culture, right? That there is a culture, whether we know it or not. What we do in our club, the practices that we do, the structure that we have, whether we say hi to people, whether we invite guests to sit next to somebody so that we can tell them what's going on, what our meeting structure looks like, what the speakers are going to talk about, what we do outside. Do we text everyone updates or, little pictures or, funny images of what's going on throughout the week? All those aspects play into this club culture that we can do actively to make it so that people do want to come and they do want to spend their time, because similar to what Brianna was saying, our number one thing we're fighting against is not the Lions Club or Kiwanis or the Elks or anything like that. It's time. It's family. It's work. It's, all the other things that we have going on in our lives. And so we want to make sure that what we provide as far as value, it's either additive or it's at least worth their time to be there.
I saw the phrase in some of the Rotary material, make people feel like they belong. And I imagine it varies from place to place once again. If you're a global institution, what belonging looks like and feels like, and what a satisfying accomplishment for a Rotary Club is. It's completely different in India than it is in Japan, than it is in Chicago. And so there seems to be an emphasis on surveying people in the club and seeing what their expectations are and what they want, and let them change things to what they want to do.
Absolutely. We are a member-driven organization. Everything we do as an organization is grassroots, right? All the club projects, all the collaborations, the policy, everything is member-driven. And so our entire organization is built on asking members what they want to do. And so we want clubs to do the exact same thing. We want clubs to ask their members, well, what's important to you? What do you care about? What are you passionate about? And then we want to create experiences around those things so that members are more engaged, more bought into what's happening at a club level.
How does that sound to you, Brianne? It's something is that what you hear from members from the membership department side?
Yeah, I agree with Nick completely. So what makes it so difficult is that, you could have 60 members in a club that have a different answer to that question. What do you want? What are you interested in? And I think that fostering kind of a feeling of belonging really depends on having respect for what different people want in their clubs, and also understanding how much people change. Maybe their core values don't change, but what you can do, how you can participate. When I started at Rotary, I've been here for 12 years. And when I started here, I did not have kids, and my life was really different. And so if I think of, a journey within a club and what that journey would have looked like for me then versus now, it's very different, right? And we need to continue to be able to adapt and change around our members. And so whether that is, my needs as a mom to 2 younger kids, with full-time job, a partner who has a full-time job, or you and sort of what you're, with grown kids and, your own interests, like we need to create a home and a space that works for everyone. And so that is the challenge that clubs face, to do that in a way that we are, first of all, first and foremost, we need to ask. Right. And say, hey, Brianne, what do you need? How can you participate? And what are you interested in? Versus Jerome. And then, find that happy medium so that, you can put together an experience that works for everyone.
I imagine the thing that works against that is what happens when humans all start doing things together sometimes is, this is the way we've always done it before. This is this is our club. You're joining us. Here's what we've got for you. And, it's not a two-way street. It's like, we're the club. We've got the stuff. It's not is that an obstacle for clubs around the world?
Yes, absolutely. It is. I would say that that's almost the most difficult thing that we are dealing with right now at Rotary International. We have different things that are happening as an organization. We have clubs that are wanting to take new steps, new phases, new changes. And there is significant pushback to this traditional way of doing things, or that's not how we've always done things. Or if you start a new club in this area, maybe you'll steal members from our club, and we don't want that. And so there is this constant push kind of back and forth. And so we do try to encourage it as much as possible. One of the things that Brianne and I constantly talk about are just these small, simple changes that clubs can make. Oftentimes we're not asking clubs to, remake everything and do something, that no one's ever heard of. What I like to say is our clubs oftentimes are crawling and we ask them to run.
A marathon.
Yeah, exactly. But what we need them to do is to walk, right? We need some simple things that they can do that can really make a big difference. And so kind of the idea of throwing a pebble with the large ripples going out, there's a lot of small changes that can be made that have significant and sustainable impacts for a club.
And what kind of things are those small but significant items that might really make a difference for a club?
I'm glad you asked, Jerome. I came prepared for that question, actually. So we have a couple different things that we often talk about, and by no means am I saying this is the list, right? Nor is this backed in deep research or evidence. These are things that we've seen, that we've noticed through working with clubs, working with districts over the last few years. And we've looked at the clubs and districts that do specifically well, and what are they doing? And so I've come up with a list of 5 things, and I have examples for all of them. And so let me just kind of share some of these ideas out. But the first one, and we've already touched upon this, is really a club knowing their identity, who they are. The idea that Rotary Club experiences can change from club to club, well, one has to be aware that they are a specific type of club. So I look at my own Rotary Club experience. I started working for Rotary International in 2018, not a member of a Rotary Club. However, I'm a very external-facing staff member, traveling to events, working with district leaders, working with Rotarians. And the number one question that I got asked all the time, and Brianne knows this because I'm sure she gets asked it all the time, is, why aren't you a member of a club? And so I didn't want to jump into it. So I met with many different clubs. I went to club visits. I, met Rotarians all around the world. And there was one club that was unique to me that I was interested in. It was this Rotary Club of Global Action. It was an e-club. I didn't have to go anywhere, which is really convenient, especially as somebody with 2 young kids. And I could meet online. And not only could I meet online, but I could meet people from 22 different countries. And as somebody who likes to travel a lot, that was really fascinating. And then I got to build relationships. And then when I go to these conferences in Australia or Singapore or wherever it may be, I have friends that I can go meet. And so when you look at the typical Rotary Club structure of meeting once a week, having a speaker, doing service projects, maybe do a global grant here and there, that wasn't actually something I was looking for. I was looking for a personal connection. I was looking for friendship. I was looking for this global reach in a club. And so when it was presented to myself and it had this unique identity and they knew their identity, it became attractive, and that's why I joined it. So number 1 is joining or finding out that identity in each club.
All right, I want to bog down there for a second.
Let's do it.
The whole idea that every club has a story to tell or has an identity. And this is something, if they know what their identity is and their story is, that can help them attract new members. It may not be you, but it'll be somebody who really wants to do things within the community of X where this is located. And if they've done X, Y, and Z in that community, then they've got a story to tell.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be anything, complicated. It could just be, hey, we meet because we really like this one service project in our community. We do the local 5K every year, and it is awesome, and it brings people together, and it is what our club does. And that really influences number 2 on my list, which is knowing your product and really providing a product that reflects that identity. And so if your identity is about global connections in my club, well, guess what every week's meeting should be about? Connecting, meeting with each other. That's kind of the purpose of that club. If your club's purpose is service projects, then every week you should be talking about the different service projects. You should be inviting speakers from other organizations with whom you can collaborate. You can do all these different things. So you have to be very specific with your intentions in creating that product. And you have to be willing to kind of adapt the structure to meet that identity.
It almost sounds like we're at a point here in number 2 where we can say something about fostering a new club. If you're a club and people come to you and they're like, well, we really want to do an environment thing, and we don't want to do all the other service projects you're doing where you're painting people's houses and doing other things, you can say, hey, you should form a new club. Do it.
Absolutely.
But yeah. But yeah, that seems to go against that's my members. I'm losing those guys. I should try to get them to paint this house.
Yeah, you're exactly right. A new club could always be an option, and there is sometimes pushback to that. And so satellite clubs are other options that we have, which are kind of sub-clubs to the sponsor club. And so they're still members of the sponsor club. They're still associated. They can still go to the same club meetings, but maybe they do have a different focus. Not to keep talking about my own club, but we do have a group that speak Spanish. And so there's been discussions about creating a satellite club for, the Spanish speakers. And they'd still be a part of our club, but then they could have meetings in Spanish at a different time. So exactly what you're saying.
And Brianne, this is a membership growth thing. New clubs, new members go up.
When you charter a new club, you need to start with 15 members. To start. And I think that can be daunting to some people, but you can also there really is a lot of flexibility. And one of them that he mentioned is a satellite club. So for instance, if there's a daytime club and it meets, Tuesday afternoons, but, I would like to bring my husband and my children to a service project. I want to make sure my kids are involved and understand the importance of giving back. Okay. And there are other people in my club that feel similarly. Okay. So on Saturday mornings, once a month, we're going to get together with that group of people and we're going to have this satellite club because that is what feels good to us, and that's a way that we can be involved in a meaningful way. And I think that just goes back again to asking what your members need, whether it's within your club or if a club is not interested in changing in that way, it's time to start a new club.
Where were we? Number 2 or 3?
So that was number 2. Number 3 is set unifying goals. And so Rotary clubs are very focused on setting and achieving goals. But one of the things I like to talk about often is if you look at a sports team, and in North America, we obviously like North American football and the NFL, and you see a team of 50 to 60 players from all different walks of life. They come from the country, they come from the cities, they like different music, they have different religious beliefs, they have different ideologies, whatever it may be. But the teams that end up winning at the end of the season tend to be the teams that have a really close-knit locker room. They get along. They like each other. They enjoy spending time together. And that's oftentimes because they're working towards that goal of winning. And so when we look at a Rotary club and we look at, we have conflict, our members aren't getting along, they're fighting about X, Y, and Z, and it's driving members away. So-and-so said something that really offended somebody else in our club. We hear these things all the time. My first question is, well, what do you like? Do you have goals? Are you trying to set goals? Do you have big, scary, audacious goals that can unify those members so that, hey, even if you don't get along with this other person, you're working towards something greater. You're trying to achieve something as a unit. And even if you don't like each other exactly, you still need each other to get to that goal. And so, a couple weeks ago was able to go to a district, and this is at a district level with many different goals, but a district set a goal of raising $1 million for one of their foundation dinners. And it was cool to see so many people come together and find different ways to work together to achieve that goal, which they did on that night. And this is a district out in California, and I was able to be there in the moment whenever it happened, and you can feel the energy. And that's kind of, the message that we try to permeate through all of this is that there's quantifiable and unquantifiable aspects to this club culture. And there's an energy that is palpable in many of these situations that you can create authentically through things like setting and achieving these big goals.
All right. So, that is the magic, I guess, of Rotary International.
Absolutely.
And that doing something meaningful. You join together with friends and hopefully friends and do something meaningful. You become friends.
Yeah, it really is. And that's where, I look at just my 7 years with Rotary International, and the number one thing about the staff, about the Rotarians with whom I've worked, it's the relationships that really keep me coming back. And you form these relationships by doing amazing things together, right? By achieving goals and working together. Like, as much as Brian and I get along great, but if we were sitting in a club meeting just eating chicken every single week and that was about the extent of it, I don't know if we would be as good of friends. But if we, work towards achieving membership rates and retention numbers and all these difficult things, that's what builds that bond.
We even know from research that the reason why people join is because they want to make a difference in their community. So it's the local service. That's why they join Rotary clubs. And they end up staying because they make friendships, because of the relationships they build. So we even know that from research.
All right. Now we're on to number 4.
We are in number 4, and we've actually already talked about this a little bit. So this is just to kind of, I guess, review a little bit more, but it is listening to your members. And it really is super important to listen to your members, but then there's a second part to that, and being willing to adapt. You know, one of the tools that our membership team provides is membership survey tools. And you can find this on myrotary.org, different ways that you can ask members how you're doing. What do you like about our product, our meetings? What do you like about the service projects? And it's amazing. And we see clubs take advantage of this. One just a couple of weeks ago emailed me from Pennsylvania, and they said that they do a biannual survey, so twice a year, and then they totally adjust what they're doing based off of that. And they've actually stopped doing projects that they have done for years to do new ones based on those results of those surveys. And then on top of formal surveys, you know, much of this is also dependent upon the club leadership, and it's those informal touch points as well. It's, you know, the handshakes, it's the text messages, the phone calls, you know. That's really also what makes a big difference by hearing from your members.
And how's the Pennsylvania group doing on building members? Is it working?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're growing. I don't have their numbers off the top of my head, but they're a growing club. And, you know, in membership growth and membership retention is obviously just a metric in the success of a club, but they definitely are.
All right, that's a good thing. Where are we now, 5?
This is 5, yes. And this is another one of those small things that really has a major impact, which is consistently communicate. It's one of the things that, at least in North American region, which is the region in which I work very often, is we struggle with communication. We always say Rotary's biggest problem is not doing good in the world. It's telling people that we do good in the world and doing it consistently, right? So Rotary clubs have the opportunity to send out newsletters, to update their websites, to have an active social media. And what we often see is that, you know, they'll send out a newsletter 1 month, or they'll update their website 1 month, but then they don't do it consistently. For that to work, we need consistent communication. There's a Rotary club in Ohio that actually grew by over 100 members in the last couple of years. And when we asked them, there are over 200 members now. And when we asked them what the number one thing was that helped them get from, 100 to 200 plus, it was consistent newsletters that highlighted the service projects and the activities of the club, with club meeting locations, club meeting times, what to expect when you come to a club. Do you need to bring $20 because it's a meal? Is it in a specific location? What should I wear? I mean, these are all questions that prospective members have that as members, we assume, we already know. This is what it is. But if you're new to a Rotary club, you have no idea what to expect. And so they did a consistent communication month to month, and that's what they credit most of their growth to. And those are the small changes that we're talking about, that we want people to consider when they're creating their product, which is their club experience. They have to consider those exact same things. I went to a Rotary club in Arizona the other day, and they said, okay, this is my location. This is where you need to be. And it was a business park, and I had to take like 3 different parking lots to get there. And then I had to wander around like I was lost. I finally found it. The door was locked, and I was, ushered in, and it was a back little room in the back of this like communal workspaces. And this group only had 8 or 9 members, and they're like, yeah, we're really trying to grow. And I was like, well, of course you're trying to grow. This is a maze. It's a labyrinth just to get to your club meeting.
And it's gloomy.
And it's gloomy. And there's no energy. There's no vibrancy here. And yeah, how could they reflect their community? How would that be possible? They couldn't even fit their community within the room. And so the number one thing I said to them was like, hey, let's change your meeting location. They did. They went to a different space, much easier parking lot to get to. And it was easy to find. They were there to help you sit down, find out where it was, you needed to sit. There was a big space with great music, great lighting. I mean, these are the things that we want clubs to think about. And it's a production. It's a show, right? They're little aspects that we want clubs to consider so that, prospective members feel welcome, they feel invited, they feel included. And that can include, of course, like accessibility, dietary restrictions, all of these things that, people still are able to participate and enjoy.
That's excellent. I'm glad we went through all 5 of those. That was an effort, but I thought it was worth it. I was wondering about onboarding new members. I bet there's a wide variety of how that happens in all these clubs all over the world. And I don't know if you can offer a cookie cutter prescription for how to onboard somebody into a Rotary Club, but is there a general place you'd like to see the clubs go?
I mean, it's a great question. And there is definitely not one cookie cutter, other than to ask. Earlier, you mentioned the surveys that we have available to kind of check in. We want to be really intentional about when we're checking in with people. So you talked about a club that's doing a biannual survey, a member satisfaction survey. You can also check in with members when they're leaving to say, hey, was there something that you didn't like about the club? And we want to know that information. But really, I think it's critical that we are asking people at the very beginning, what are your interests? How do you want to be involved? I think getting that perspective at the very beginning is really important. I think also there are little changes. Nick, when you were talking about those little changes that ultimately the pebble and the ripple, one little change is making sure that when somebody comes to your club as a guest, make sure that they know, that they're welcomed into the club, and that, if they're interested in coming back, to follow up with them, see, hey, are you interested in coming to a service project that we're doing or a social event that we're doing, and following up with them and getting to know that person. This can look very different from club to club. If a club is really small, probably not as difficult as it is if it's a club that has a couple hundred people. So there's an orientation. We do recommend that everyone has a formalized orientation. What that looks like can really depend from club to club.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we really do see the gambit. I was just speaking with my colleagues this week that they support countries in other parts of the world where they have a year-long process. But what Brianne said was key. We want clubs to set the expectations and, build that clarity, and also find out what's important to them so that they can be engaged from the beginning. And we don't lose these members, within a year or two after they've started, because turns out it wasn't what they expected. We want to really help them understand what the expectations and what the potential is for them.
How do you judge success?
I think retention is a really key metric, of course. That really shows if what we're offering as a product is working, right? Members are coming to Rotary, they're finding out something that they enjoy, and they're not leaving. So retention is definitely something that we seriously consider whenever we're looking at success. Membership growth overall is something, but we also have so many different metrics, like I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation in Rotary, with our foundation giving, with our service projects, with all the other aspects. And so there is a balance, not to mention just being in person and feeling good about being in a Rotary Club. But I think from a base level, yes, that member retention is key, because it does tell us that we are doing a good job providing that club experience for potential and current members.
Brianne, is there anything else that you would have club leaders keep in mind?
That's a great question. I think that I would start by encouraging clubs to start small. Again, thinking about the pebble and the ripple effect, it can be overwhelming. Change can be overwhelming, especially because clubs are something that we're all doing in addition to our day-to-day lives. So to make a huge change in a club can take years. So start small. As Nick said, make sure that you're sending out communications that are up to date. If you have an opportunity and you're checking in with your members and they're saying, hey, you know what, we don't like this afternoon meal that we're having. We want to do something different. Maybe that's a change that you consider, but sometimes the reality is you have a contract with a venue for a certain amount of time. And so that is not a change that you can immediately make. So we don't want people to feel bogged down by not being able to do those big changes. So start with something small.
Couldn't agree more. And I think there's just such power as well in this personal contact that we talked about, at the beginning of the conversation, of being in person and seeing eye to eye and sitting across the table from one another. When I was talking with the club recently about some of the most powerful things that they've done to create a positive club culture, they had this quote that I'd love to share. It really impacted me in the way I think. The club president said, "Having lived in different places, I've come to appreciate warmth and physical presence, handshakes, hugs, eye contact, play a role in building trust." And I think as club leaders and as Rotarians, we cannot undervalue the impact that a simple handshake and smile and eye contact can make in bringing and keeping members in all of our clubs.
Brianne Haxton is Senior Manager of Membership Development, and Nick Taylor supervises club and district support at Rotary in the Americas. Thanks a lot for joining me on Rotary Voices.
My pleasure.
Yeah.